Horsepower hangover. How the 70s ended the muscle car party. The muscle car era didn't fade away quietly. It hit a wall, hard, after years of big blocks, big torque, and Detroit flexing its engineering muscle with no apologies. The 1970s arrived like a cold bucket reality. What started as a golden age of American horsepower quickly turned into the decade that shut the party down. At the beginning of the 70s, muscle cars were at their absolute peak. Chevrolet was dropping the 454 LS6. Mopar was showcasing the legendary 426 Hemi. Ford was pushing the Boss 429. And Pontiac was firing back with the 455 HO and the Super Duty. These cars weren't built for compliance. They were built for bragging rights, for the strip, for the street, and for dominance. But at the same time, performance was hitting an all-time high. The forces that would kill the movement were already getting into position. Most people blame the government for ending the muscle car era, but the first crippling blow actually came from the insurance industry. By 1971, insurance companies realized young drivers were buying high-horsepower cars and wrecking them at expensive rates. So corporate America stepped in to protect its bottom line. Premiums skyrocketed overnight. High-performance surcharges became a standard line on policies. Big engine cars were automatically flagged as high risk, and suddenly a teenager who could afford a Chevelle SS454 couldn't afford to insure it. That financial chokehold pushed muscle cars out of reach long before Washington ever got involved. Then came the knockout punch, federal regulations. When the Clean Air Act landed in 1970, the entire game changed. Emission standards tightened, unleaded fuel mandates rolled in, and automakers were forced to drop compression ratios across the board. But the biggest shock came from a simple rating change. Horsepower numbers switched from gross to net. Engines that previously claimed 400 horsepower suddenly dropped to 250 or less on paper. Even when nothing mechanical changed, the perception of power collapsed instantly. And in the following years, the tuning became a requirement, not a choice. Carburetors went lean, timing was softened, and catalytic converters showed up in 1975. What was once raw and wild now had to be quiet, clean, and corporate-friendly. If that wasn't enough, the 1973 oil crisis slammed Detroit with a punch they never saw coming. Gas lines stretched around the block. Rationing hit the country. Prices shot up, and America panicked. All of a sudden, the sound of a big block wasn't exciting. It felt irresponsible. The country turned on high-horsepower cars overnight, and automakers didn't have fuel-efficient technology ready to respond. Japan did. Detroit didn't. And muscle cars quickly went from icons to liabilities. Models were dropped or neutered. The Roadrunner lost its bite. The Chevelle SS disappeared. The Mustang shrank into Mustang II, and the GTO badge was slapped onto a Ventura. The era wasn't fading, it was crashing. Detroit tried to fight back, but the counterattacks didn't land. Cars like the Monte Carlo SS, the Cutlass 442, the Cobra II, and even Pontiac's attempted GTO revivals were nothing more than familiar names on underpowered bodies. Marketing departments called them performance cars, but the streets knew better. This wasn't muscle, this was muscle cosplay. The real identity of Detroit performance had been regulated, priced, and legislated out of existence. But even though the 70s killed the muscle car party, they didn't kill the culture. Enthusiasts kept the fire alive any way they could. Backyard mechanics rebuilt old big blocks. Drag racers kept the legends on the strip. Collectors snatched up the last true performance models before they disappeared forever. And little by little, the spirit survived long enough for modern muscle to rise decades later stronger than ever. Because horsepower has never just been about engines. It's heritage, pride, rebellion, and identity. And no regulation, no crisis, no corporate shift can erase that. So here's the question. What's your favorite survivor from the dark years of 1970 to 1975? And if you're rocking with CarSwagger, hit that subscribe and keep riding with the culture. This is where we honor the truth, respect the past, and keep the power alive, even when history tried to shut it down.